Planning and Business Development at URA. And Mr. Kayondo, Silva Kayondo from Otas, Otas Advocates. You're welcome to the show. And lastly, Mr. Niyitegeka, Mr. Niyitegeka Micheal, Country Manager, Refactory.
Pleasure being here, and thank you for hosting us.
All right. And Mr. Niyitegeka, to start with, will be taking us through let me start with Japheth, the subject that you're going to look at, and help viewers understand how they can be able to recover this COVID-19 pandemic in the business perspective. He's going to talk about business, how to do business seamlessly to shake off the COVID-19 shocks and move from the workshops that we know, the brick and mortar shops to online shops, and I believe so many businesses have had the shift already. He will be deliberating on that, or how shall we regulate that big market, that market space, so that players coexist in the value chain with strong and weak players, benefiting from that space of the internet. Then Ms. Rowena Turinawe is going to tell us in depth about putting in place strong supporting structures to enable online business. What are the supporting structures to enable efficient use of data and technology to conduct business in private and public sector? And Mile is, of course, in-house URA. She will talk about government service institutions, preparing how our government service institutions preparing to leverage on business data and technology to serve clients better, cut operational costs, and ease the compliancy of clients. And we shall start with you after I've introduced the subject each one of you is going to talk about. I'll go to Mr. Silva Kayondo. You're going to deliberate on building a safe, secure, and trustable virtual economy. How do you operate business on using internet, and you don't fall prey of the fraud and what have you? And lastly, Mr. Micheal Niyitegeka, his area of discussion will mostly be the expectation of consumers in the new markets. Are businesses prepared to meet client expectations once this shift takes root? We're talking about shifting SMEs from the non-traditional operating areas to the internet space. I'll start with you, Mile. You can give us a general picture of how SMEs have, I will use the word suffered within this COVID pandemic, and how are they recovering as we talk now? Just briefly.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank. From our view as tax administrators and tax collectors, we have seen small and medium enterprises struggle. First of all, a number of them have not been on the internet. A number of them have suffered during the lockdown. Some of the businesses that were locked down, some small shops, and suffered through that lockdown. They've had challenges given that they don't keep a lot of stock. So when borders were closed and some of them ran out of stock, some of them had to close. We've seen schools closing and not being able to pay the pay-as-you-earn and some other income. Some of them have had to convert to other businesses. So small and medium enterprises have struggled a lot. But I'll say that we've also realized that the online businesses have come in to support. Previously, you could order for goods internationally, and some of these online businesses were not giving the options of wholesale, buying in bulk and reducing for you. So some of these small and medium enterprises have had to reinvent themselves and be able to order for goods online, which are delivered because cargo planes were not closed up and all this. So they've had to find a way of surviving. Some, like some schools have had to convert into some other businesses, but all in all, I believe that business mode is changing, and these small and medium enterprises are finding their level ground slowly. There are some studies that were carried out earlier, and we found that small and medium enterprises were only able to last for 2 to 3 months of the lockdown. And we know that the lockdown has now gone beyond 6 months, and a number of these have ended up having to close. And we believe that with some of the interventions we are putting in place, like being able to give them options to pay periodically, extending the time they have to pay. The government has also amended the presumptive review. Everyone whose turnover for us to be able to support this small business. We are looking at a new analysis that we are able to expand the base and allow these small and medium enterprises find their fees, whereas we are simply to support government so that we can allow our small and medium enterprises to grow.
Are you applying them as URA?
Yes, we are applying the interventions, and I would like the small and medium enterprises to know that we are applying interventions like if you're below 10 million a year, your earning is below 10 million, then you do not pay tax. We are applying the interventions of you come and we have a tax. If you're not able to pay immediately, we sign a memorandum of understanding and then you pay in bits. Yes, you can pay. Well, unfortunately, taxes
must be collected.
And everyone must pay their bits. So you're exempted at a later date, and we believe that at a certain time we will get back. We will get back, and we will be able to support the government. And we've also seen that in we pay a small amount, but at least
talking about 10 million gross below 10 million. Which are these
well, the small and medium enterprises revenue to support the government.
Okay. Do you realize that some of these SMEs may not return to business entirely? Has it come to your grade as you're doing research for you?
Yes, it has come in terms of some of these not returning to business. But and they are money for them to get back into business. For example, the borders can get together and go and seek money from Ministry of Trade so that they are able to get back in business. So we do we are hopeful and believe that with time there will still appear to be back. Although what is happening now is we are most likely not going to go back so much into the previous way business was run. So small and medium enterprises that are not involved into using the internet, into using mobile services, may unfortunately struggle during and post-COVID because a lot of people, services are getting right to people. The business level is we see that, for example, because of the internet services are getting right to the people wherever they are. If you go like people are not using a number of people, so these businesses have to reinvest. Some of them have to find other locations nearer to people so that they are able to continue delivering these services.
I hear you. We'll come back to that point. Japheth. Pandemic and technology precisely. What has the shift been like? If you can paint for us a picture.
Thank you for that question.
Are they taking on that space that they appreciate it and is it benefiting?
Thank you for that question. It's a relevant one in the times that we're in, COVID-19 and everything that's happening. But I think I want to raise a flag around COVID-19 especially, because I'm seeing a significant shift of conversation about recovery, and yet we're right in the heat of COVID-19. So so COVID-19 is still here, and in March it was just beginning to get started, and the fear was high. Right now we have deaths, and the fear is low. So I anticipate a longer impact in terms of whether it's loss of jobs, closure of businesses. It's really just beginning. So it's very important for us to remain vigilant during this time. But that said, when I look at the startup ecosystem, which is what I really spend my 26 hours a day doing, it's a double-edged sword. We've had startups that have closed completely and have had to go out of business and have had to reinvent their models around how they're working and what they're doing. But more importantly, and which is creating a lot of hope, we've also seen entrepreneurs, digital entrepreneurs, that have completely new businesses that have come up during this period that have grown. We have digital entrepreneurs whose sales in 6 months more growth revenue is more than put together as a result of the digital opportunity that retail businesses were affected. It's evident that about 56% of them that were surveyed demonstrated a reduction in sales, in business. Those that quickly adapted for me, I focus on what opportunity is there for us to build the foundation such that we have more digital entrepreneurs who are playing in the space, and as they play, we're able to help more SMEs go online. We're able to create new digital businesses that can grow as a result of where we find ourselves.
All right, and do you think they can benefit from this? It is not something we can call traditional in the way of doing business. It is a new normal, if I can put it. Where do you see this taking this business, say in the next 1 year?
I think a significant rise, not just in Uganda, but across across the continent. And the way we look at technology or technology businesses, they don't do business for their own sake. They do business for an industry. You know, so for example, during the resilience and recovery program, where we worked with entrepreneurs that are helping SMEs get online to continue doing business as usual. So we worked with the center, for example, and such that they can continue doing business as usual. And I remember they sent me a video of a trader in Nakasero market who was selling chicken on their online platform. You get on, you order to the growth in the startup ecosystem, the growth in the industry of technology businesses doesn't lift them alone. It lifts. Just during immunization, I got a message from Rocket Health that they could deliver vaccines, to your home. Technology change traditional immunization where everybody has to line up in a hospital. True. And this can be replicated across tourism, across health, across education. Education is literally challenged at the moment, and it's probably COVID-19 has been the response we've been having to how do we change the education system. So when we size the growth of the startup ecosystem of entrepreneurs, they will in turn create platforms and solutions for how we can lift and challenge the education system. But whereas that's the case, and I'm very happy to be at URA today. It's a conversation we've consistently had with URA in terms of and it's not just an entrepreneur conversation, it's a government conversation, it's a private sector conversation, it's an academia conversation, it's an investor conversation. For us to achieve the promise of entrepreneurship, of lifting opportunities within, we all have that part to play. Otherwise, we're just moving in a technical. But at the moment, all indications are showing on the right trajectory. I wouldn't be here. I would be running away from URA.
I know. In this era, Ms. Rowena, where internet is not entrenched, wherever you go, you'll find it in urbanized spaces. Yes, people are using it. But beyond that, what happens? And I know that SMEs are not only in urban centers, they're up country, everywhere. How can NITA help the country have?
So from a government perspective, we try to support SMEs and the smaller businesses, first and foremost by reducing the cost of doing business. So what we do as NITA, for example, is we build up the national backbone infrastructure, which gives internet to government. So as we keep adding the number of entities using the internet for government, again in turn take advantage of economies of scale and reduce the cost for government. We found that in 2018, from 2016, the cost of internet for government reduced by more than 80% for government. What noticed in the private sector was a trend, because in the private sector players also reduced their cost of internet. So from a government perspective, what we do is we provide the shareable services like NBI, we provide services like a payment gateway to facilitate online transactions, we provide subsidized SMS gateway services for government entities so that the cost of them doing business is reduced. So then the effect on the citizen is that one, the cost is cheaper for you, but also you don't have to drive, spend your fuel, or take a bus to town to get a service. You can sit at your home and use it, or you can log on to Facebook, or you can these digital services come up because people are mobile, and that is what we aim to do as government. So what we do is we're putting in place these various shareable services so that the cost of doing business can be reduced, not only for government who is receiving it, because if I paint a scenario of if I go to a government entity, I have to go, drive, I've driven fuel, I've spent time, then I line up, then they tell me go to the bank and make this payment, then I have to drive back to the bank, then come back to the entity. That's time and that's money.
Cost.
Yes, it's all cost. So that is one of the ways that we are trying to make it easier for SMEs by reducing the cost of doing business.
Do you meet them? Do you talk to them?
Yes, we do actually. We've that's how I met Japheth. We have partnerships with UNCDF, UNICEF, all the entities that focus on SMEs and digital inclusion and financial inclusion. We have partnerships with the universities, with the innovators. We try to, as much as possible, understand it from their perspective. Because if we look at it only from government, then we will fail to meet their requirements. One of the things, if you realize that one of the reasons that businesses or generally service delivery fails is if there is a gap in understanding. You would be surprised to find out that in government we have 320 systems. Believe it or not, we actually have automated systems. But you have to fill in the power, you have to line up, still not because in many cases when you dig deep, you did not sit to understand what is the mistake, what is the need, what is the gap. So for us as Mita, we have actually changed our model and we're trying to go in to look at what is the actual need, what is the actual problem, how do we come in and fill the gap that is existing among the SMEs, among the innovators, among the academia that are going to be churned out into the world. What are their needs? What is the cost of living for them? What do we have? What do we have available as government? So it's one of the things that we try to do as government. And I feel like we need to, as collectively as government, encourage SMEs to know what government is doing. You will find that somebody, if I ask me on this panel, how many of us know that we have a consumer protection portal? We don't. And
CPA.
Yeah, we don't. And we are here talking to SMEs because government is here to help you, but you must understand what they have put in place to help you. Electronic Transactions Act, there's an act, you know your rights. Electronic Signatures Act, we have the cyber laws, we have consumer protection, now we have data protection and privacy. You must know, if you want to have a strong foundation for your business, for it to thrive, you must be aware, what is government doing for me? What have they put in place? Where do I go if I feel like it's unjust? What are the tax laws? Businesses need to take the initiative to find out what government is doing.
I hear, and I think whoever is concerned with this, all of us, by the way, we have to be aggressive, when putting it out there. For example, Japheth is saying SMEs are going when the eased, and the markets opened and other places, as we know. People now, the tradition, you have to walk there physically. And I know you're experiencing that as well. People have to walk there because that's what we know. We've been doing it, and this new shift might seem to be something hard for all of us to put in practice. So, teaching people the usefulness of this shift of going online. Your comment, Michael.
I think it really starts with that. But also the realization. I hear people saying I'm going on the internet, and I have said the internet is no longer a product. The internet is a marketplace. And when you start thinking that way, it also means your approach to how you appreciate internet or the use of the internet fundamentally changes. Now, and that means that there must be a collective effort from the government side. I like what NITA is doing, but we need to see a little bit more in terms of accessible and affordable. The access to infrastructure devices, because you see, unless you're able to create a certain amount of demand, the private sector providers will not be able to bring down the cost to a level they want it to go. The reason they are aware they are is because of the investment they have made. 3 years ago, we had all sorts of, and tax was reinstated on laptops and smart gadgets. In some of the countries, what we're seeing is devices, smartphones, are being regarded as computing devices and therefore don't attract a tax. So that way you create a significant number. Now, let's also look at some of the numbers. Uganda, if you look at some of the data, they give you not more than 3 million active users. Now, you can look at internet users, the number of people who are active on social media as a good number to look at. Internet users, you have about 10 million or 15 million because different gadgets that access internet are all regarded as unique users. But if you look at social media accounts, they're not more than 3 million active. So that market is still small. People that are going online and using. Now, in terms of education, there are two ways to look at it. You have the people that are in the active innovation ecosystem doing a lot of work, but then the consumer side is still struggling. The innovators that we are working with at Innovation Village, at Hive Collab and all these other incubation hubs, they're not getting the numbers that would make their businesses thrive. Why? Because the demand side is still struggling to understand how to integrate internet or internet-related solutions. That's number one. Number two is the whole attitude and fear of the unknown. I mean, getting people to use online banking services is a nightmare. Somebody says, who is seeing my money? When I go to the bank and withdraw my money, it is me who has seen my money, not so. When you tell the person that actually you don't need to go to the bank, I tell you why. Why do you? Because they don't, and there are quite a number of people who still prefer, I would rather go to the bank. They were forced to use ATMs and online banking because of the lockdown, total lockdown. But if they had a way, they would still want to access the banking hall. So that will be a progressive shift. It can't turn on overnight. You are saying people have decided to go back to the market. The other thing that needs to happen is 12, they enable. I have a number of enterprises that are mentoring, and one of them told me during lockdown he decided to shut his main business line and decided to go into distribution. So he was supplying vegetables. So I said, okay, so what is your model? Are you going to have inventory, or are you going to enable others? So the one who has the tomatoes, the cucumber, you enable them, you create a platform. Or are you going to supply? I said, but do you understand the logistical requirement? Because if you have a supply of, let's say, 50 kilograms of tomatoes today, tomorrow if your demand goes to 100, what are you going to do? What kind of inventory? He said, hey, he had actually figured out that the business is just beyond being online. It is understanding, like Rona was saying, how do I manage the back end? How do I deliver fresh tomatoes to you? How many motorcycles do I require? Do I have a partnership with Safe Border? All these things are things that we also need to begin to create and support. And that support cannot really be left to the private sector. Government needs to play an active role in enabling this to happen. Why? Because the new consumer prefers convenience. The consumer is looking for where can I find it easily and can I compare it. So there's no template that we can give to the small businesses, unfortunately. There's no template that you go tick the following things. If they all tick right, you're good to go.
Starting point is try it.
I think try it, have a mindset of, and I was mindset of, I will learn from it. And it's easier that way. But also realize that the technology enablers, the innovators, need to learn from you. Now, what is actually happening is that we are seeing the technology startups begin to start these businesses that they don't have the competence in. So you're not a doctor, but you're starting an e-health platform. We need it the other way around. We need to work with the doctors. Rocket Health is doing an amazing job because the back end are medical professionals. We need to see lawyers come on board and drive and explore opportunities for technology. I need to work with someone who is running a pharmacy and can help. That's how technology is going to work and make it come to life. So they need to have a lot of interest in technology.
We have Mr. Kayondo here talking from the legal point of view. We need a secure, safer virtual economy. And how do we go about that? You've said that we're worried of transacting online. Yeah. They want to see their money in the physical. Yeah. They don't trust online transactions.
Yeah. So broadly for the audience, we can say I prefer to call it maybe digital security. These are and privacy are not compromised online. And that goes really to the broader security, into the broader discussion around online safety. It's making sure that the tools we are using are safe and robust enough to not only protect us from harm online, but also protect our money or transactions or information or anything like that. And then trust is really the fuel that drives all that conversation. So I'll approach this discussion around trust for me because we are discussing the digital, and that to me is really automation of trust. So there is the offline trust that we have, trust that partners, organization, the employees, etc. have, that the company we are giving our data will protect it, it will be safe, it will be secure from leakages. And I'll tell you why that's important. Pre-COVID, the greatest, I've been paying attention to two particular sectors around digital. One of them has been mobile money. Why? Because within the last 5 years, between 2015 and 2019, mobile money grew from 9 billion to 20 billion in terms of transaction worth. BOU has compared fraudsters will be there, scammers will be there, because that's why we work, that's what all of us are looking for. But the other sector I have been paying very close attention to has been very highly self-border, Uber, Bolt, things like that. Not because really I'm a lawyer advising all those companies, but I'm also interested on the wider economic impact. So, as we all know, our economy here is layered. You have the very top 1%, 1.5%, that's very poor. You have a mid sector, 35% that's semi-formal, and then you have a very broad 60-70% that's very informal. Now, all those approach digital security, digital platforms, and trust in very different ways than so I'd like to come a bit more to the Ugandan context and how things are driving from a point of security and trust. I've talked about mobile money and the impact. I agree with Michael that the greatest on-border of internet services in Uganda is social media. Actually, you'll be surprised if you do a survey. You might find that most Ugandans think the internet is Facebook, Google, Twitter. So, yeah, most people think that's the internet. But from a security and safety point of view, we're well aware that the greatest social media companies are not Ugandan owned. They are foreign, and all of us are trusting them with our data, with our things like that. We've talked about the growth in devices, smartphones and feature phones. The feature phones are like the Technos and Infinix. The smartphones are that. Maybe until recently, we didn't have a local company manufacturing devices here. And when we are acquiring this device, you don't see like a very nationalistic plan around device. This is the only country where I have not seen a policy direct mandating telco companies to sensitize public just on their resources. So you buy your device here, you go and use it. Your location tools are on, all your cookies you're just accepting because your privacy and things. But also you get to see even from the third point beyond mobile money, social media and device use, the other angle that ties in so well is around even the security. I want to pirate country around software. Around APIs, which are like sort of extensions built on open source software that's foreign. And then you get in there to see a lot of other mechanistic interventions, like around blockage of like mobile money or social media, and facilitating the use of virtual private networks. And because very few of us can afford paid for VPNs, most people are downloading these free versions. It's actually a very cyber security risk.
She wants to run away from me.
Not much, but these are people letting me know transparent because Uncle Silver has earned some money and passed on to nephews and nieces who I genuinely think should be online for running and other tools. You cannot control what I see. So where is that information that's going on? Who is tapping into some of these VPN sites? I'm not really saying. I think for now I leave it at that. Maybe later, at least try to see some policy proposals that I may be
should that worry a proprietor of a small
maybe for Love and Brokers like Michael and the faculty team, you have a in terms of where your software is coming from, how you use it. But for the bigger, if you pirated someone's software and you're running it as your point of sale terminal for your transactions, you have no legal obligation whatsoever should you be scammed. Because I mean, look, you're already committing an illegality by pirating software. You cannot, like, for any loss that you have. You may not even be able to get adequate protection cover because you do not have the intellectual property rights over which such an insurance. But also, and lastly, is that some of these platforms now are what we call systemic in financial terms. What that means is that a slight hit can have a wider impact on the economy. You saw what happened with the mobile money service just a few weeks ago. Just from very tiny fintech in terms of like that. But up to now, I think the telcos and the banks are still trying to bring everything back in the house. I mean, if you're processing 2 million, 5 million, 6 million transactions a day, a month, a week, that can have compromise your business in ways that you may not even be able to think about.
I hear you. What? Viewers, you're watching us live from the URL. We're in the taxpayer appreciation season, and we are discussing how I believe people like this is business that can come online.
I think absolutely right. Just see the amount of volume that has gone on Facebook in the last 4 months promoting products and services. Are they doing it well? Are they doing it professionally? You'll find all sorts of services. It's just amazing. The last 2 months, the kind of, if you want tailors, they're there. If you want whatever product you can think about. Now, trust. I bought products during the lockdown. Now, when you said I was like, okay, this is interesting. So the price point, this is the supplier. Okay. And this was on Twitter. So I called the guy and he says, do you have a WhatsApp number? I said, yes. Can you send me samples? Can I look at the picture? All looked fine. So I buy. Because it was friendly, I also bought for the kids. In a week, they were all in pieces. So I called this guy, and I'm like, he says, yeah, but that's what you paid for. I said, but go back to your description. Because you're now not having a promoter, someone who's going to speak well about this, someone who's going to just say, look, this is what you depend on is the and doesn't have a value, the trustworthiness. Can I worthily speak about this business? So I called the guy and I said, I like what you're doing and I really want to mentor you and support you. However, my concern right now is because you're online, it's also a business to a certain class of people. And if you don't change the quality of products that you're bringing in, you're likely to be hit. Because if I buy it, 20,000 during lockdown is a lot of money. So if I lose it immediately, do you think I'm going to come back to you? So, but also because there's a variety, there are more options to pick from. I'll probably find someone else. So any business can technically or typically go online. Just see what has happened with safe food. Is it safe border food?
They're quite many.
Yes. The guy under a tree has signage, safe border food. You can order the guy who roasts or the Rolex saying 4,000 businesses were able to integrate the payment. But that was because it was crunch time. It was a crisis. Has the behavior changed?
Yes, you want to come?
I think the behavior can't change immediately.
Sure.
And like Zike said, COVID starts with months and months. We will end up having.
We're going into a year.
But I know that government in the National Development Plan already had this in plan. This is the trend and I was sharing. Government is planning to expand the internet reach from 38% to 70%. So as we are moving toward there, yes, some people will go back to the brick and mortar, but I think the pressure around may not allow so many to go. And also, our government is planning to reduce the unit cost of internet. Was estimated at $237, and government plans that within 5 years we should be at $70 cost of internet.
We're already at 70 actually. Yes, we are. $70 per M, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
And for the BPOs and universities, it's now it's at 35.
Okay. Also, there's a plan to increase the population accessing online, the proportion of the population, but also government services. The government does not use of internet. Ourselves having to attend physical meetings when there's Zoom and all this. So government also has to be a major for us to be able to support the
Even with this
SMEs.
lockdown,
Yes.
I know of offices
Yes.
that have not picked up.
They haven't
already.
picked up.
They still want to meet
But
physically.
also, I also wanted to
Interesting.
about tax regime. Yes, we need to look at the tax regime, but our tax base is million taxpayers, of which half of those are employees. So if we look so much at the tax regime as the solution, we still have to regulate. So how do we support the small and medium enterprises grow so that they contribute their part for us to be able to support? We know that our tax to GDP is only 30%. So we need to find ways, and we need to, and I like what Nitayu is doing and Japheth is that how do we encourage many more to get on board. Of course, the revenue administrators, it's very, very important for us that businesses are alive. Businesses are alive. That's why we've come up with even the interventions of we are ready to you. Those who, I know not so many go to court, but we're also ready to discuss the alternative dispute resolutions and not allow people to go to court. We are using a lot of our data and analysis, engaging national water and what to be able to expand the base and know if Frank has 10 water meters, then he should be paying some good amount of money without me looking for. Before I go to squeeze the person who is doing it, I'm doing that analysis here. I'm working with national water, I'm working with KCCA. If Frank has 4 shops, and I also know that government, in the programs that are coming through, we are working together to have one source of personal information. You know, now you go to NIRA, you come to URA, we will ask you what is your name, your mother's name, so we've all come together and we want to have one. So we'll be able to give services easier, faster. We'll be able to tell Frank's actual income.
We will come to that.
Income, then we are able to allow about security. Who in the country is looking at quality? those earphones that are supporting that business, that who is going to give me confidence as merely that chapati
Quality
is quality and will not give me issues? I think that is an area we also need to look at as we need to come out of the COVID.
Just one thing
Yes, sir.
around the slight intervention around the tax regime. And this is really my personal view. I have a very fundamental issue with how we see tax regime in this country and how we approach it. URA will tell you tax is a non-proportional. Like you do not expect a similar goods of goods and services for the same amount of tax you have paid. And I find that very troubling, especially for the ICT sector. And this is why. We keep saying, look, we expand the infrastructure and things like that, but you do not see a direct, and probably this is really even beyond URA. If we said in terms of appropriation, all the money we are getting from OTT and the sector and do all these nice things that we want to talk about. So that's, to me, that really would be a very catalytic driver. But now when you go to see, I don't think it is even in terms of 5 priority areas in terms of budget allocation. Maybe you could advise how you're not even among the top 5. But we see it. We see the enabling influence it's doing, we see the catalytic work it's doing, and that kind of thing. So I think that strand from maybe URA as policy influence, from Ministry of Policy Advisors, through Cabinet, through that discussion, all the way through the Mother Ministry, that strand needs to be very clear and streamlined if we are really going to say that, look, we want this sector to be well projected it to be in all these NDP3s and Vision 2014 and things like that. So I think the resource allocation has to match the talk.
I hear you.
If I could just speak to that a bit, what he's actually right. The funds allocated to the sector, yes, silver, are not sufficient. But one of the things which is even in line with what we're discussing is partnerships. We are aware that the funding is inadequate. But as government, I like what Millie said, it's true. We began to collaborate and say, okay, we don't have enough funding, but we have a partnership with 19 private sector players, for example, on internet. So they buy bulk, they resell, it's cheaper for us, cheaper for them, partnership. We have a partnership with an industrial park in Namambe. We're manufacturing phones locally. Partnership. We have partnerships with the Innovation Hub to have a mobile container where all these tiny e-services are in one place for convenience. So as we work, as we acknowledge where we are, one of the things we're leveraging is partnerships, because without partnerships, it's very hard to go by. And I feel like this is particularly important for SMEs because they don't have the amount of capital that, say, Mulwana might have, or, you know, a bigger industry. So for the SMEs, my advice would be to focus on relationships, peer-to-peer relationships. I always say your network is your network. You need to know somebody who knows somebody, or somebody who can because especially for digital, if you're going digital, you need to have people who can, like how Michael said, he would never encourage anyone to buy those earphones. So for SMEs, their biggest asset, I think, is partnerships. Find peers, find people who can refer your product, people who can ask, people who've been there before you, who can application yourself, but mostly leverage on partnerships, because there'll never be enough money to get the job done. But once you collaborate, I think you can get, there's nothing unstoppable. And the beauty of digital is it has removed all these barriers. You know, analog gave us barriers. Am I the right religion? Is my product looking the right way? Am I in the right political party? You know, but when it's things online, there's no barriers. You can be anyone, look anyway, sell any product, as long as you can reach a greater market. I think it's opened a lot of opportunity, but partnerships, peer-to-peer relationships are one of the ways that you can get your business booming, or your, you know, without...
Miller hinted at synchronizing data. You know, if the data that you have it, if you go to another government institution, do they have it? You know, those things that make work easy.
It's where
Where are we now?
we actually have a project that's ongoing. Like she said, we want to have a single source of truth that's pegged to the national ID. So we've already, you will be surprised at what government will be doing. So we're working with key institutions, URSB, NERA, URA, KCCA, to synchronize this data. Immigration, so that when you go to an office, I just show you my national ID, and you are able to see the details of who I am. The beauty of this happening now is we have the National Data Privacy and Protection Act. We are working on regulations, so by the time the platform is there, we should, as government, be posted to give you the confidence that we are not going to abuse your data. You will not hopefully find somebody selling your personal details on it. Your details will be online, they will be secure, they will be verifiable across the board. So you should be able to go to one stop, get a service, pay your tax happily, smiling knowing that I'm not suffering.
Silver is here. Should there be a breach? We run to silver quickly. Okay, but back to SMEs. You know, in business, when you go to buy, you also looking for something called honesty besides quality. Michael was talking about the earphones, the quick example. You know, doesn't it worry that when SMEs go online, these values are going to be eroded or fed somehow? Japheth.
Of course, it's a very valid worry if you look at honesty. We've all received that email address, and you didn't know this one is not coming from an honest sender. You know about how much money you're going to receive if you do A, B, C, D. You've all seen that WhatsApp message of someone saying that I'm going to send you these things from wherever but first send me X. So that's why I just said that where there's money, the scammers will definitely. That's a risk, and it's a valid risk. But I think the risk of not acting, of not going digital, of not exploring the opportunities that can come with digital is even higher for us, and that's why we need guys like Silver to ensure the protection is there, the policies are there, and we need government to make sure that they are enacting this. But as much as that's the case, for me, what's keeping me more up at night is the movement to action for what needs to be done for all of these benefits to come to life. I think we're losing a lot of time from knowing what to do but not quickly moving into the action that will bring the opportunities to life. A lot of what Silva was discussing, and I've had this conversation with him, is what can quickly become a startup act. How do we support small entrepreneurs and small businesses that are trying to grow? So how do we quickly move to ensure that relevant policy is in place to protect against the scammers? It is, but there is one thing of it being in place and then operationalizing it is completely a different ballgame. So I think the cost to keeping quickly by not the private sector is what's going to get us left behind. I remember it was 4 a.m. I think a week ago, and I was watching Tesla, NASA, launching to the space mission, and you can see all of these ideas that seemingly were nothing, but eventually end up becoming what the world is speaking about, is appreciating, is celebrating. The first years of safe border, nobody thought it would become anything. saw the president order like it is an association, you know. So there is a real missed opportunity. It doesn't happen just because it's supposed to happen. So I think for me, I'd like us to, I'd like to say double click on what do we need to do to realize these opportunities. And if you look at, Uganda is not on the table for the opportunities. We see opportunities go to Kenya, we see opportunities go to Cape Town, Lagos, and yet we call ourselves the most entrepreneurial country in the world. Recently, we Nigeria of fintech started off the whole by an American fintech. Now, and this is what I tell entrepreneurs or stakeholders, that for every entrepreneur out there who's doing well, I can show you an equal who's struggling because the actors have not done that. And recently, our own recently raised $30 million to expand his own startup. But you see, this had to happen outside the ecosystem in Uganda for it to be valid. So for me to be able to replicate that, to act, because the delay for us to act is actually, what we'll live with for a very long time. Our children ask us, what are you doing?
I hear you. If you're watching us live on social media, on Twitter, our hashtag is the Taxpayer Appreciation Season 2020. And I'll come back to you, Micheal. We want to give tips to SMEs